Alright guys, so I am under the car and I'm going to do the best I can to record this to make it an easy step-by-step. So everything down here, this is the end of the car, that's where the muffler is. Everything down there, along with right up here, are just the rubber hangers that you have to deal with. And now I've moved all the way up here. Oh, this is really hard. So right up there is the front of the car, and if we follow it up, we've got the downpipe coming down, and there is one bracket that I got to take off. It's a 14 millimeter. It's this one right here. So you have this bracket that holds really the whole thing on. The only bolt, everything else is looks like hangers so far. So I'm going to take this one down, and then the hangers at the end, and this whole exhaust should end up just hanging down. Okay, so I was able to get that bracket off, and then coming down here I got that rubber piece off. That wasn't too hard. It just kind of slid over if you yank on it a little bit. And then I started having issues back here at the muffler, because we have this one, and it looks like what you're supposed to do is take off the screw that goes in there so this whole thing drops down, but I don't have anything that fits on the other side. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is welded in place and the bolt goes in through the other side, which makes it really hard to get to, because obviously this stuff isn't easy to get off, so I need a breaker bar in there, and I don't have any breaker bar that fits in this little space back here. So what I did is I came over to the other side, the right hand, well, facing the back of the car. And for this, what I did is I actually got my breaker bar, the end of it, and I pushed right here on the back of it while it was still attached up here. While it was up there, I just pushed on it until it popped out, and then I rotated it down. And now that that's off, the whole exhaust can actually move back and forth like that really easily, so I can get the other side. And then the other one that's right back there, there's another hanger back there with the rubber on it. It's that one right there. Once I get those off, then I think I should have everything up until the downpipe. Alright, just got it. I got that last little hanger, and now the whole thing is dropped down. So now that it's hanging and we follow it up, there's one thing we have to do before we go on, and it's that right up there. A little hard to see, but it's your O2 sensor, the little bung thingy sticking up at the top. That's your O2 sensor, and it's attached by a wire. I did a video on how to get to that, and mine has been replaced, so I need to grab an O2 socket thing I got from AutoZone. So I grabbed this little thing. I got to figure out what size I need to pop it on there, wrench it off. Once I wrench it off, then the exhaust can come down without shredding that wire up there. So if you wanted to, down where the exhaust comes down here, then it makes that 90 degree. If you wanted to, you could remove it from here, but yeah, I tried and there's no way that thing is ever coming out. It is rusted to all hell. So I'm just gonna break this whole thing down in one piece. So now we gotta get under the hood. So here we are under the hood, and if you look down here, that is where we were just working, right down here. So we need to remove that, but that's connected to the turbo. I have to take the turbo off. I also have to take the intercooler off. If you're just doing the exhaust portion, you should just be able to take it off where I said to take it off, or if you're doing a downpipe, then you have to take off this heat shield and actually remove the downpipe from the turbo. So this is the whole reason why I'm doing this all in one go, is because basically everything has to come off. Look at that intercooler. Seems so small, and you can tell right across here, that line where this crappy plasticky splitter has been sitting. This thing sucks, but I guess it's okay for the turbo that's on here. So, let's take this off. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take off these two 10mm bolts that go across here. And this one you're gonna have to need something short. I have been using these little universal joint things here so I can like get around corners so I don't have to worry about stuff in the way. Got these off Amazon and so far I like them. They work. Now if you're thinking of upgrading your intercooler, pretty much anything Subaru wise will fit in here. I'd say almost anything. For the Forester, these things are a little bit wider than the other ones, like the WRX. The STI, you can get one of these, they're a little bit thicker. Pretty much any STI version on the Forester is going to be a little bit better than what's on here. I got mine off of a 2018 STI. So it works. The only difference is it's actually even longer than this one, and this bolt is not going to be able to bolt into anything. So yeah, it is what it is. And also a little note, I'm keeping the two bolts here and hopefully they fit, but just a side note, if you guys are doing this, this metal rail here actually changes throughout the years. So I believe this is the same with the WRX and STI up to like 2008. Once 2008 model, the wagon came in, I think they changed it, and then they changed it again for like 2012. So if you do get an aftermarket intercooler from, you know, wherever, make sure that this is gonna bolt on. For mine, I got the same one that came with the STI, the 2018 that I got mine from, because they changed theirs in 2017. So technically, you can plumb this up and it'll be totally fine, but you're not gonna have the same mounting points. For this intercooler, they go straight in like this. For the one that I have, they actually have brackets that come out and go straight down. So yes, this can still work, it's just a pipe, but it's not gonna be able to be mounted on. That's why I made sure I got mine from the new one. So after I took this off, I wanted to show you guys, there's a reason why Subarus really need catch cans or air oil separators, which is I'm going to install in another video. But if you look inside here, now it's kind of hard to see, but there is just sludge that is gunked up inside there because it sits like this. So it's just a layer of oily sludge, I'm guessing is just along the whole bottom side of this. And that is just nasty. Yeah, take a look at that. That is the sludge I was just showing you. All I did was just scrape the inside. That's just the tip that's just sitting there right before the hose that goes into your Subaru's engine. You don't want that. Once those two screws are out, you can just pop the hoses, the three hoses off of there. Those are off, easy peasy. Next up, we're going to take out the two bolts on either side. These guys are going to be 12 millimeters. After both of those bolts are out, we can head over here to the throttle body that connects into it. Got to take these alligator clips off on both sides. Something I didn't see to make this a whole lot easier is this bracket right here. It's got two 10mm bolts, and if we take it out, that's what the right side actually screws into. It's just a big bracket to have something for the intercooler to screw in onto the right side. So if we take that out, it's going to be a whole lot easier to maneuver this to get it out of here. So the last thing you need to do to really make this as easy as possible getting it out is either remove the hose for your bypass valve, or you can remove the little nuts that go on either side. The only difficult part of that is actually getting down here onto that last one. If you're able to get to that one, then this thing will pop out and it's super easy. If not, then you're gonna have to take the hose off, which can be kind of a pain in the butt to actually get this whole thing off. But once you get that out, that's off to the side. Then the only thing you have to worry about is the clamp down here. Just make sure that's loose, and that's the only thing holding this in. So this is just going to come out to get out of here, and then right to get it out of there. Once all that stuff is off, come to this side, grab on the whole hose and pull it towards you, it'll pop out. And same thing with the pipe right down there. I just got it off. Just have to grab the whole intercooler and pull it towards you. Now that all of that stuff is off, this whole thing can come out. Oh, look at that shadow. There it is. Look at all that. Look at all this room for activities. Anyway, once you have that out, if you're getting a bigger intercooler, these AC lines running through here, because that new one's gonna be bigger, it's gonna be pushed back further. So, the main one we have to worry about is this one. Now these are pretty durable in terms of being able to bend them back just a little bit. Nothing major, just to get these out of the way, to give yourself a little bit more room. And once you're done with that, make sure you put some hose on here because it's going to be rubbing. Not like, you don't need anything super special like high heat resistance or anything, but hose on here for rubbing because that new intercooler is going to be right there and you don't want that rubbing a hole in these AC lines because the stuff in here you don't want out here. And next thing I'm going to do, oh God. Oh, it already looks bad from here. If you have idle issues, do this. That's right, the throttle body. Since I've already have this stuff out, throttle body is coming out and it's gonna be cleaned because it definitely needs to be cleaned because I showed you that oil buildup in there and this is where it all goes. You can already kind of see in there it looks not good. So, good thing I'm doing this. Let's get this guy out. Okay, so pretty much scratch taking this out because with all the coolant lines and stuff, it's gonna be a pain in the butt. It's actually not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. So if you actually move this up, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's actually not that bad. It is decently clean. It does need a little bit of cleaning around the edge there. And then once it opens up, everything on the inside actually looks decently clean. So I'm just gonna grab a toothbrush and some throttle body cleaner and scrub this out a little bit, let it dry, wipe it up with a rag, and I should be a-okay. Okay, now that the intercooler is out of the way, the throttle body is nice and clean. A little bit dirtier than I thought it was up top where I couldn't see it, but doesn't matter, it's clean, didn't have to take it out. And next up, moving over here, this is where your turbo is. This is the inlet to the turbo. Just to make things easier, I'm going to take this bracket out of the way. This is the left side where it screws in for your intercooler. So 12 millimeter and 12 millimeter bolt, take that out, and it kind of makes it a little bit easier to work on that over there. Okay, I finally got everything off for the shield to show you guys that if you don't have a pristine car, these bolts are going to snap off. But that's not a huge issue because you don't need these bolts after you replace the turbo. You don't really need them at all. You just get rid of the shield and put on a blanket because it works much better. That's what I'm going to be doing. But there are a few that you need to get to. There is one here, one over on the side. If you look back here, there's a bracket. There's two that go there. There's one here and one further down there. And then the hard ones to get, there's two down here. Pretty much anywhere on here where you see a screw, you gotta take it off. So all the ones around there, and then once you finally get them off, break them or actually unscrew them, then you just have to wiggle this off and do something with it. I don't know. Get it. Son of a... Oh, hold on. There we go. So if you want a better look, got two holes there, those two down there, there's your bracket, and yep, that is your turbo shield that we will not be using anymore. Yes, I had to take the bottom off because I dropped a 10 mil and it got stuck. Damn it. with that heat shield out of the way, we can finally get this downpipe off. So to get the downpipe off that's connected to the hot side of the turbo, there are 5 bolts that we need to take off. You can see 2 up here, and then move around over to the side. There's another one that sticks out over here. And if you look over, there is one down here, and the other one you can really see at the bottom of the car. And here we are looking underneath. You can see the 3 bolts. That lowest one right over there, that's the one that you can't really see from up top. So take a little time, pop those bolts out. All those bolts up there are gonna be 14s. I've got my long breaker bar here that I'm just gonna finagle in wherever I can and pop those loose. Okay, it is officially the next day, and I finally got that last nut off. It was completely seized on there, and it was completely rounded off. All of the other bolts that I got off here were somewhat intact. I had 2 of them that snapped off, and that was just a big pain. I actually had to go to, you can get them at Lowe's or the auto parts store, but this is the one I got. But basically what this is an extractor, and it grabs onto anything that's rounded off like mine was, and grabs it and takes it out of there. Now the only issue is I need to figure out how to get this out so I can use this again. But anyway, that was a huge setback, and it took me forever. So before we pry this thing off and it's loose, there's this little bracket up here. I bent this quite a bit trying to smash all these bolts out of here because they were being stubborn. But this, if you follow it down, there's actually a bolt that is holding it together. It's down there. My camera is having fun. You can see it right there. There's a bolt down there. I think that might be the only one. That's the only one I can see, but I'm gonna take that off and see if I can get this unattached. Okay, so there is one bolt that we still need to get this thing loose so we can take it off, and that is mounted to the transmission. You can see I have a little bit of WD-40. There's a bolt right up there that I sprayed with WD-40, and then it's on a bracket that's attached to your downpipe here. So I'm underneath the car, and I have to reach that bolt up there, and hopefully it's not seized and rusted like everything else. So another way you can see it is here from the engine bay. If we look down, this is the downpipe, and it's gonna be right down here. There's the bolt that we actually need to get to. See, the best way I got to it is I put the 14 mil on there, an extension. I already popped it loose, but I have my breaker bar down here, and as long as you break it loose, you just have a little bit of a turn with the breaker bar and pop it loose. I got my normal ratchet on here, and now I can actually get this thing off. Now that I have the nut removed there, downpipe should be able to come down, but the one thing I was telling you guys about is right here. It's a little bracket that you have on. You're supposed to take a screw out of there, and see how it has that little lip? You just have to make sure that the bracket that's right here that's connected to the exhaust, you just need to make sure that comes up and over this lip so the whole thing can actually drop down. But anyway, once those are all off, you need to get something in between here, especially for me since I'm sure this is rusted in place. Get something in here nice and sturdy and pry that open. It'll get this all out of the way, and then there's one thing left. There's a little tab that goes down on the exhaust that you might have seen when you took down one of the hangers, but there's a little tab down there. We just have to make sure it's up out of that tab so this whole thing can drop down. But first I need to break this loose. So once you pop it off there and everything else has been done, the whole exhaust just drops out of place like it wasn't even there. And there we go. Throw the exhaust over to the side, and the exhaust is out. Now for replacing the turbo, Once we have all the exhaust components out of the way, our intercooler out of the way, then we can get to the exhaust. Now the exhaust, what we're gonna have to do is take out the bolts here on the side. You can see the bolts over here, keeping it in place. And the reason why we have to take off the exhaust or disconnect the downpipe, whichever you do, I'm replacing mine, so the whole thing has got to come off anyway. There's actually a bolt underneath here that can only be accessed once you take the downpipe off. So there's another bolt down there. There should be 3 keeping the turbo in place, and you should have 2 on this side and then 1 over there. If you have the gasket, then you know what it looks like. It's kind of a Y. There's 2 here and then it tapers off to another one. And yeah, you need new gaskets, especially this one. This thing was falling apart when I was taking it off. It doesn't even sound healthy. So the 2 bolts here and here, those are pretty easy. You can use a short socket and get over those. But this one right here for the bracket, it's not actually attached to the turbo, it's its own little bracket. That one you're gonna need a long one, longer 14 than the other ones, because this actually has thread sticking up way further than these 2. So grab that. Once you get all 3 of those out, then you need to find a good area to get under the turbo to get that last bolt. All right, so here we are looking up at where the turbo goes to the downpipe. If we look up here, let's try to get this right there. That's the bolt that you're trying to get to. So it's basically impossible to get to once a downpipe is actually attached, but once we have it out, we can go in and we can take that off. So what I did is I just got my wrench, my socket with my breaker bar, popped it down here right on the threads and popped it loose. Now all the bolts holding this in place are completely off. So the only thing keeping the turbo in place now is, if we look right in here, you've got this in the way, so you need to get that alligator clip out of the way. But the main thing is you've got all of your oil lines and coolant lines and stuff that are still attached to the turbo. So you're gonna have to take these off. You can either take them off here or up here, depending on if you have new lines or you don't. I'm not replacing the line, so I need to keep these and transfer them to the new turbo. So I'm gonna take them off, and I really don't want to drain all of the oil and all the coolant. So as soon as I take them off, I'm gonna plug them, either with a bolt or a rag, or hang them up or something. And once I do that, then I can continue on, because right below this is the Uppipe, and I am replacing the Uppipe. So not gonna be a super quick one, but I am gonna do a temporary block on these. So I'm starting off the line here. And what you guys can see is I took the bracket off for this just so I have more room, since this is a whole hard line, to get to these 2 down here, because you have to pull them separate ways with wrenches. To get to this, I just removed the 2 bolts on here that were screwed in right here and right here, just to make it a little bit easier. You kind of have to wiggle it out a little bit, but this thing turns, so it gives you a little bit more room to work with the line. Okay guys, for this hard line, those 2, you've got this little nut at the top, little acorn looking one, and then there's one right below it. Probably won't be able to see it on the camera, but there's one directly below it. And if you guys want to get this off, they're both 17 millimeters, and the one on top is actually the one that moves. So I just cracked this one loose, so you can see that's turning. So if you're ever confused and you're like, I don't know which one it threads into what, the top one is the one that's threaded. So now that I have that out, I already got the banjo bolt out of here. Make sure you grab the copper washers that go both on the top and on the bottom, and make sure you replace them if you are swapping this out. Make sure you have new ones. Okay, finally got the turbo out, and what I did exactly was I removed the hose from here, took that off. I actually left both of these intact because it's kind of a pain in the butt. So instead what I did is, as you guys saw, I removed the line that goes here, and then over on this side, this is where that bottom one comes through. So the line goes underneath, comes around, and attaches to this bottom one. So this one's fine, I can keep that on there and take the turbo out, but that bottom one loops around to the hose that goes right over here. I have it off to the side. It's this hose right down here. It's not the one up here that is shiny, but is the one right down there. And if you look right down there, there is a place to put the hose, and that's the one that comes straight out here. Like, I didn't even know it was there, but these things are just, they're so light on there, it just pulled out when I picked it up. So that's going to be kind of a pain when putting in the new turbo, or if you're just putting this back in, making sure that this actually fits on there. So now that the turbo is out, there's a few things that you need to swap over. As you can see, some things are missing. That's because I put them on the new turbo, such as these two lines here for coolant. These two lines do need to be modified a little bit, at least for me. It may not be for you, depending on which turbo, but for mine were further apart, so I had to snap it in the middle, which was actually really easy. You just bend it back and forth like, you know, you would any sort of metal. Bend it enough times it snaps, and then pop those in there the same orientation they were before. They're just a little bit more separated out. And then you also need to take the line, which is right here. I cleaned it up a little bit, cleaned the surface here. That gasket was really on there. It was like super glue. It did not want to come off, but got it off, cleaned the surface, cleaned the inside of this hose. The hose isn't cracked or anything, so I'm going to reuse the hose. And when it comes to the clips here, these are put on because they're so easy to actually put on, because it's in such a hard location. If these things aren't tight enough and they just barely stay on there, all you have to do is take the little finger clips here and bend them the other way. So I can't really do this, but bend them out, separate them, so the hole here becomes smaller. You just bend it like that a few times until it goes around the hose nice and tight instead of how loose it was before. So that's what I have to do. I have to stretch these the other way so they become tighter. Then I can put the new gasket, which came with my turbo. So new gasket, pop it on there, install that, and that's pretty much the last thing I need to do besides the gaskets, because I'm replacing the gaskets that go on the downpipe and the uppipe. So pop those on, and then I will pretty much be done with this part. Alright, I have ran into another problem. This pipe right here, like I was just saying, if you put it on here, the holes do not align up. I've got the left one perfectly lined up, and the right one, as you can see, is quite a bit off. Yay! So, looks like what I'm gonna do is drill the holes out just a little bit, just so I can get that screwed on. These aren't threaded, so it shouldn't be a problem if I just drill these out enough to where I can get them both to get in there. Should be totally fine. Alright, so my modification was just to drill the holes out, and that's what I did. Nothing too major, just drilled them out until I lined it up, popped it on here until I could get both screws in. That is good enough. Just make sure if you do drill it, the bottom part, you're gonna have to file it down because of the drilling. So file it down if you do have anything and make sure it's nice and smooth. Now, in order to get to the up pipe, which is right here, you're gonna have to obviously take off the turbo, which is above it, and then the downpipe to get the turbo off, and the intercooler to get the room up here. Anyway, once you actually get to this point, you need to make sure all these bolts are off for when it drops down. I'm not totally sure about this mounting bracket right here. You might have to take that off to get it off, unless you can drop it down enough, which I think we'll be able to. But another has snapped off because rust and seizing is terrible. I love sirens. So here we are back under the front of the car. There's your oil filter for reference, but if you look over here, you're gonna have this big old heat shield And you can see how rusty those are. This heat shield needs to come off, and those bolts I'm sure are just going to snap and give me a whole bunch of problems. But that's the first step for your up pipe, is to get this heat shield off so we can really get under there. So before the heat shield comes completely off, you'll notice right up here you have your upstream O2 sensor or air fuel or whatever you want to call it. So we're gonna have to come up to the engine bay and unplug it. Now, that O2 sensor is this conveniently blue wire here, so we just have to unplug that so the whole thing can drop out and you don't have to use a O2 sensor wrench down there to get it out, which is quite a lot harder. And if you want access, I'm over here on the right-hand side of the car. There is a little panel, and you can see it right in there. It's a little access panel that I have off. There's 3 little clips that go to it. And right now I just have it just hanging on by one so I don't have to take it off. But if you move that up out of the way, you can get in there and get to the O2 sensor if you want to put the socket on. And if you want to just unplug it, there's 2 little clips that hold on to it. You're gonna have to either figure out how to get them off or cut the little clips. So there we go, finally got the heat shield off. I had to break the bolts, I had to bend it and destroy it to get it out of the way. Hardest part was getting it off of the O2 sensor. Now I have the O2 sensor wrench that's specifically made for them, but of course it's seized in there and the whole thing got shredded, so that's rounded off. So I took that whole thing off. It's unplugged, sitting down here, took off the 2 clips that were holding it in right above it, and now we're at this point. This is where your up pipe goes up to. I've got some WD-40 on the bolt here and of course on the other side. I'm gonna let that sit. Hopefully that will help me out when I break these apart so I can finally get the up pipe out. Okay, bolts are out. The up pipe, as you can see, dropped down a little bit. So now comes the fun part of taking it out, finagling it around from up here and trying to get it to come out without any issues. Of course, almost forgot, the brackets that are up here are in the way. So I need to take off the bracket here, which is just being held on by that, and this one right here being held on by the bolt down there. Once I get those out, then the up pipe can come up. And once you have those off, the bracket I already took off over here should come off. This one, I forgot. I did not see that there is actually another bolt hiding right here. There's another one just kind of chilling out down there, being a douche. Alright, and the last thing you need to do before that up pipe comes out is to get the wire. So you're gonna trace it, it's gonna come along here, and it's gonna be the 3rd one down. I have it removed already so you guys can see it, just a little tab in the back. But you push down the tab, it pops out, looks like this. Then you can push it through, all the way through here, take this clip off like that. It's just little alligator things. Goes on like that and you just push it up, no locks. Feed it through and then you can take it off and reuse it if you need to for your up pipe. And just like that, we are free. We've got everything out of the way. Up pipe is now gone and I didn't even need to unbolt or do anything with the manifold down below. So now I can get my new one and pop it in here. And here is my new up pipe. This is the Invidia up pipe. I do have the one with the little bung here, so you know I can try to keep it as stock, at least with sensors, as possible. And it comes with 5 of these studs to go in each one of the 5 holes so it can connect down there. And you've got a short end and a long end. A short end is going to be the one that threads into here. and I have all the other ones done already. It's going to stop once it hits the middle, and then what you want to do is take 2 washers. I just grabbed 2 from all the stuff that I pulled apart. You're going to put one on top of the other, and then you're going to tighten the top one so this whole thread will then lock into place. You just need to tighten it up a little bit on each one of these so these don't move around when you're actually threading it down there. Alright, got those studs in, and I just placed it down here. This is going to be the general way that it looks. You're going to have the 2 studs still facing up this way, and if you do have the bung, it's going to be on the left side, kind of over here. So I have it set down just like that, and then I'm going to go down below, and I'm going to put in the screws so this thing can be attached. And if you don't want to deal with this crap in the future, get some anti-seize, because it's going to help. And also, don't forget the new gasket. Clean the surface and pop on that new gasket, because look at that old one. That's nasty. And with the 2 bolts down at the bottom holding this guy in place, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sensor back in, thread it into the bung, come up here, and plug it back into its wiring harness. Alright, so I got it in, but the issue was I had to bend it a little bit because it was kind of smashed up against here. The wire still reached, just barely though, but yeah, I did have to bend that a little bit. I don't think it threaded in as much as the stock one either, but it's in there. It's in really, really tight. I don't think there's going to be any sort of leak coming from it, but still, that was a little annoying. I had to chomp that up a little bit. But hey, if it doesn't work, this Uppipe comes with a little bung stop, so I can just thread that in and just get rid of the code. Alright, next up we need the Grim Speed High Performance Sealing Technology Seal of Approval. That goes right there. No, I'm not sponsored by Grim Speed because they denied my sponsorship. Damn it. And once you got your gasket on, you can go ahead and put these 2 brackets back on, which is so much easier than taking them off. Just pop on the nut on both of those, the screws down there, and don't forget your 1 screw down there. Again, so much easier to put this on than take it off. And next up, the new turbo gets to go in. So, the first thing we have to do, and probably the hardest part, is to make sure we get this hose to go in place. So if we look down here, we've got that little opening that it needs to go onto. So, we're gonna pop this down where it's supposed to go in place. I don't have it on here, but make sure you have both of your hose clamps on here. Like I said, I stretched these the other way so they're a lot tighter fit now. Throw this one on there, and yeah, try I will. And once you get the turbo in place, you gotta line up the 3 screws, 1 in the back there, and then the 2 over here. And for me, the bottom part actually wasn't too bad. Once I got it lined up and you go underneath the car, you can see where exactly it lines up. And I don't have the clamp on there right now, but I actually have enough room down there to reach my hand up and put the clamp on. But once that's lined up and you kind of start wiggling it down, the biggest issue is getting this hose onto the front of the turbo. But now that I have everything in place, I can wrap this back around, tighten it up, put the nuts back on to secure this in place, put the hose fitting on there, of course the hose fittings onto both the coolant lines, and yeah, pretty much get this thing all snapped in. Well, I almost got everything back on. Got the coolant line up here, got the vacuum hoses attached to the 2 little pieces up here. But when I went for the oil line up top, looks like this one doesn't exactly fit. So hopefully I can bend this down a little bit. That bottom one that it threads into doesn't really have a whole lot there to bend or move. So I'm hoping I can bend the top up just enough to get it threaded in there and get this thing attached. Alright, so that was pretty simple. I got that bent into the right place and tightened on. Really the best thing to do from what I just did is I attached it up here and then bent it the best I could to get it around where it's supposed to be attached to the one down here. And then once you get that, actually unattach that one and then attach the other one while it doesn't have the bolt in, and then just kind of wiggle them around until you get both in at the same time. So now that everything is plumbed up to the turbo, we've got to get the downpipe on. I got the TurboXS downpipe. So the first thing that you got to do is put in these little studs that are supposed to go on the bottom three. These top two are going to be bolts with nuts at the end, and then the other three holes need to have these studs. It's the same process that you need to put two nuts on the end, tighten the top one, and it'll tighten the whole thread into place until it stops. Then you take both of those off and you do it for all three. Once you do that, all the studs will be secured in place, and I already did that, so now I can put the downpipe on. But before I do that, of course, got to get myself a new gasket. Now, if you're wondering where I got the nuts and bolts for the downpipe, here I have them. Got them actually sitting over there because, as you know, all of mine were rusted and seized. Some of them snapped trying to get them off. Honestly, I just went down to Subaru and got the parts. Later on, I found out that AutoZone and some of the other places actually have the exact same things, probably for cheaper than the dealership. So if you need new ones, I would say check out AutoZone, O'Reilly's, you know, your local auto parts store to see if you can find those before heading to the dealership, because I got the two bolts for the top, the studs, and of course all the nuts that go around, and it was about $50 just for that. So I really suggest trying to go to another place besides the dealership. Okay, just finished plumbing this on. I haven't tightened anything up, but a good suggestion is to start with the very bottom one, the one that you can only access from underneath the car. Just the way that the downpipe is and how close it is to the threaded portion. To put the nut on there, you have to make sure it's lifted up. So start with that one and then tighten the rest of them, or else you just can't get to the bottom one once all the other ones are in place. So the next step in our exhaust is going to be our free-flowing cat, or if you just have a regular open pipe emission things, I don't know. Anyway, I have the high-flowing cat that comes through here, and the only thing you have to do to make sure this thing fits is make sure it fits the bracket over here on the other side. There it is. It's got, at least the TurboXS has a bracket built into it, so it goes right into that little clip that we had before when we were taking it off. That's the only thing that's keeping this up right now. Other than that, it comes with two little bung holes, one over here and one on the other side of the cat for your O2 sensor, which I have hanging right here. It's going to have to move because I have mine exactly where it was, still zip tied in place for when I actually replaced it, but it doesn't reach either the one further up or the one further down. So I'm gonna have to cut those zip ties and possibly put this further up or further down depending on which one I choose. I might do this one down here because the one up here is closer to my drive shaft, so that's moving. Maybe over here, depending on how it goes, but it's pretty simple. Just spin it into place, use the bolts, make sure you use some never sees on those, and then we'll move on to the next piece. Alright, so I got everything put into place. I've got the gasket in there, both the bolts on there. Problem though, is with this mounting piece here, it did not line up exactly for me. So what I ended up doing is I went up here and I took out one of the bolts and then I loosened up the other one so I could get this into place properly, and then once this is completely into place, I came back to this, tightened up this bolt, and then tightened up the one that was left in there. So this still has support being on here, even though it's not in exactly the right place that the original OEM one was, but still, I mean, it's holding it in place. It's got a bolt holding it up in there, totally fine. So now that I'm done with that, I can move down. Actually, I still have my O2 sensor. I need to reroute this back up and plug it back in up here, zip tie it, make sure it doesn't dangle, and then I'll be done. Next up, we have our mid pipe down here. I've got it sitting like this with the hanger right down there. You can see it because right above we're gonna have it hanging off. Let's change that. We're gonna be having it hang off the hanger right there. Hopefully that'll align up. I doubt it, but here's to hoping. And of course, we've got to plumb it up right there with the screws and bolts that it gave us. Hopefully it gave you. And then down there, we'll see what we can do. All right, looks like we have a success over here. And then if we follow it, that's really, under the car, okay. And then we follow it down, and it actually hooked up fairly well. It's a little tight, but it did fit. It's on the hanger, it's all good. Last but not least, we gotta put the muffler on. So I just quickly threaded in the nuts to the bolt up there just so I could get a test fit, and like I thought, this isn't going to fit. This is the WRX exhaust that I have here, and I'm using a Forester, so it doesn't fit exactly perfectly. The hanger that's back here is nowhere close, so that hanger isn't used at all. But the two hangers over here can be used. So if we look up here, I've got one over there. The one I have off here, I have off so I can show you. But these two, if you're using the WRX, I think this is also STI, if you're using this exhaust, then you can still use these hangers, but the stock hangers that you have are too short. They actually need to come down about this far, so you can use the hangers to pop into these. So I have these linked down below. I got these off of Amazon. They came in like 2 days, just like everything on Amazon, but these are much longer. Here is the original one, and here is the new ones. They're much longer, so you can actually hang this without having to do any super modifications. You just get a new hanger so it hangs down more. Here we are, just got both the hangers up. There's the far one over here. This one you just slip into place. This one over here, you just take out that 14mm bolt. The bolt comes all the way through, and then on the inside, you have to make sure you grab that. On the inside of the old one, there's actually a hollow washer, like a thick, I don't know what to call it, but it's like a spacer washer kind of thing. But check inside there to get that through, and then you just put it on the inside of the hole, and then just fit that bolt through. Now I have them both hanging up here. Now I can raise this up and actually put this into place. And once I do, then I can go back over there and tighten up those screws. Whew, those are quite difficult to get off. The holes on these ones are a little bit smaller, so you just have to push really, really hard. Once you get this large beveled out portion here, once you get it through the inside, way, way easier. Just push it all the way through, but getting it started is just a pain. But once you do, there you go. You have it nice and even, right where it's supposed to be. You've got a little bit of a gap. There you can see, you got a little bit of a gap in between your bumper and your exhaust. I could just barely stick my finger up in there, but that's what you get with those longer exhaust hangers. A lot better. Everything's nice and tucked up now. Just have to come up in here, go back up there, and tighten those up, and the exhaust is done. So next up, this big old boy. This is from a 2018 STI. This is gonna go in. And when you get one of these, compared to the Forester, the blow-off valve or the bypass valve is different. You can see it's got a hose that goes off in a 90-degree this way, whereas the stock one went down this way to plug into here. So the best thing to do is to get, well, you have to get one of these that fits on here, but the hose that comes along with it. So this shape hose will go basically where it's going to replace this one. It's going to go down here underneath, just like this old one, and then it's going to attach right down here where the old one was. So in my case, I just have to take this hose out, the one that runs along here, completely take that out and replace it with this hose. Once that's done, I'm gonna have to move and bend these AC lines back a little bit before I put the hose on them, because if I grab this intercooler and I put it up here, that's the first thing that hits, is right there. I mean, technically it would fit in, but rubbing and vibrations and stuff, you don't want those. So I'm gonna push those back a little bit and take that hose out. So to get the hose off here, obviously this clamp has to come off to attach it from the intercooler, but you take a look around. You don't necessarily need to take this hose clamp off, but it is attached up here. So you gotta take that bolt out, and you might need to take the hose out to get to it, but you can get there with a wrench. Then following it through, you can take that hose clamp off like I have already done, and the last one is right there. Okay, another poopy face for me. I've got everything off, all of the rubber hoses, as you can see, everything is off except for this metal pipe. There is a bolt hole here, and there is another bracket, and there's another hole below the throttle body that you can't get to unless you remove the throttle body. Now that's pretty easy because you don't have to really remove any of the lines, just the throttle body itself, but I don't have the gasket, and I'm never gonna use this again, so I'm probably just going to wiggle it and snap it off, because America. So bending did not go as planned. The thing does not want to break, it's very thick. So I had to take the throttle body off. It's very easy. 4 screws, you can see there's one there. There's one that goes right underneath the position sensor. There's one there and there. It's a square. And then it just pulls out just like that. You can see the 4 holes there. And if you want to, you can do a little more cleaning. I'll just wipe away that carbon. And you probably can't see it, but right down there, it's right there. That's where the bolt is. After a very long time and praying and hoping and crying and punching a few things, you can get that thing on with the hose clamp, and it's routed around here to your bypass valve. Now we get to put the intercooler in. Now the intercooler, like I said, I've got these bent back. See how much closer they are? It's pretty much as far as I could get them back bent wise. So I do need to put some hose on there, but I mean, I just pop this down. I do need to put those brackets back on, at least the right one, because I know that it has to have the right one. And the left one, I don't think so, because I don't believe it's going to actually screw into the left. All right, here I have the new intercooler kind of mocked up. It's not exactly in place, but I just wanted to show you guys over here. I've got the bracket installed. It's right there, so I just need to scoot it forward a little bit and that'll be in place. But the bracket over here, as you can see, is not there. That little lip right over here, right down there, that's where that's at. So really there's no use in having that bracket at all. It needs to be about that much longer to actually reach out and hit that one. So I'm just gonna take this off and remove that bracket altogether, just so it's not smashing any of the fins underneath. So I mean, really there's no reason to have that. It's not supporting anything. So now it's basically a dance, a game to get this in. You have to line up the throttle body, you have to line up the hose that goes into the turbo. You got to make sure it's not smashing up against your new turbo down here, because it's touching right across there while you're trying to get this into place. And then you also have to make sure this bracket down here isn't rubbing against the side, because right now I can't get it down because the side of this is too big. So it's just a dance. You got to make sure that hose gets in, that hose gets in. Once those two are in place, this thing should just perfectly come right where it should. But until then, it's just a lot of wiggling and minor adjustments until you get into place. All right, guys, fast forward to the future, which it is now. I noticed that I could not do this, and in fact, you actually need a new elbow if you're gonna have this work at all. If you're doing the new giant intercooler with a car that's not supposed to have one, you need to have a larger elbow. So you can either get the Grimspeed one, or you can get the Mishimoto. The Mishimoto one is the exact same thing, except way cheaper. I don't know why Grimspeed is so expensive. You can get the elbow and the coupler from Grimspeed, so this piece and the elbow down there for 65 bucks. I got this one by itself for maybe $10. And then I got a separate one, this coupler, because why not, from TurboSmart. That was on Amazon, really highly rated. People used it for the exact same situation I'm using right now. So I'll link those down below if you guys need them, but those are what's going on. All right, I've got everything all mocked up now. I've got the elbow down here, the coupler. I've even got the bracket right here in place. Now I just need to tighten those up and put that into place and tighten all these hose clamps up, and then I can finish this up and I will be done. And of course, cannot forget about the blow pass, bypass, blow off, whatever you want to call it, valve up here. Make sure you get a new gasket. Of course, I'll link it down below. I got this one off Amazon, I believe, so yeah, got to put that on too. If you're doing this swap like I am here, you're gonna have to get some of your own bolts that go through here, because before, on the original intercooler for the Forester, they actually have little threaded pieces that come out, and it's just nuts that screw onto it. Here, you actually have to get a bolt and screw it in. I don't know 100%. I got these from a hardware store. They're like a M10 times 1.25 or something like that. But you can also get these at like AutoZone. They actually have the specific kind, the heads that have the little washer attachment like that. Something that looks like this that would fit in there. But whatever you want to do, or if you have spares laying around that'll actually thread into here, you are going to have to get those if you're doing the swap. And yes, I'm not going to forget about it. This terrible, terrible scoop. This is going to come off. This whole thing is going to make it so it's only filling up about this much. So this is going to come off until I can get a new splitter. And if you are taking it out, it's got little nubs here that go into each one of these little things. It kind of hooks it on there. I'm just going to leave this as it is until, like I said, until I get the new splitter and scoop to actually fit on this. But if I just keep this on, it's not going to make it any better. So that's going to be thrown off for now until I can get that, which should be pretty soon. Then, of course, there'll be another video on how to take out the scoop and put in an actual splitter that will at least somewhat fit this. Okay, so as much as I wanted to put this stock pipe that came with this intercooler, it's just not gonna work. This pipe here that goes into here, that I am going to take out for the oil can, the oil catch that I'm gonna put in, so that's not a problem. This one is pretty much the problem. It's not long enough. I could put an adapter in to hook it up there, and then this one over here, I could cut it It doesn't have the bevel at the end. I could bend it a little bit to fit, but as of right now, I don't have any of the stuff for that. So it is doable, but a little modification, you can have that working. Alright guys, and finally, the last thing I'm gonna do to complete this little setup, I have to protect everything I put in. So I am putting in an oil catch can. Now this is extremely good quality, all aluminum, got some nice weight to it. It has the brass right here on the inside, like it has everything the Mishimoto has, but that one's like $100 and this one was like maybe 20. And it comes with pretty much everything you need except for the hoses. And like, this is really good quality. Comes with the O-ring in there. As you can hear, everything is metal. Comes with the universal mounting, so I just have to figure out where I'm gonna put this on the car. This thing is so awesome for the money. So this is where I decided to actually mount it up. I just got one of the holes that was in here, made it a little bit bigger, and popped it into one of these tabs. There's another one right here, but it looks exactly like this. Put it through, put a washer on the other side. I didn't really need the washer, but or a nut on the other side. And there you go, it's not going anywhere. And I bent this tab up, as you can see, it's a little messy, but I bent that tab up so I could mount it like this. It's universal, so it wants you to use those two and drill into something, but I've already got existing holes, so might as well use them. Now, when it comes to hooking this up, I got these tightened in. I had to go to the store and grab some 1/2-inch hose because I didn't have any. So this one is going to be routed up and it's going to be connected right here to this pipe. That's how that's going to be going in. And now I need to be doing this one, since this is the inlet, because it even says down here in and out. So air's going to come through here with some oils. It's going to do its all little baffling thing, and then it's going to come out here, and then I'm going to route a hose. And this hose that I have right here, I still have it connected. This is the one that used to go up here and connect to, I mean, this is the other one, but normally, factory, it's going to sit right in these clips, and it's going to go into the bottom one. I have it connected in here, so you know this is the hose. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to put in some new hose right exactly where this one is and route it to the oil catch can. And that is it. That's all you have to do. There it is. I just pulled it off, and if you can see, that thing is pretty nasty. It's gunked up. I just smeared my finger on there and I've got all this oil and grossness on there. So this is definitely going to be an improvement over what's factory system is on here. Here we go. Everything has been plumbed in, put into the right place. This, ignore that. I just need to get something smaller. This is not what I was supposed to be using, but hey, I had to get something that fit. Everything is in the right place. Everything is tightened up. We finally have everything done. The turbo, threw on the turbo blanket. There we go. Now we get to start it up. But something you gotta remember, if you did replace the turbo or took the turbo out and put it back in like I did, before you just start up your car all willy-nilly, you have to prime the turbo. You gotta get the oil and the antifreeze, all that stuff filled to the right place. So what we have to do is put the keys in the ignition, and before starting, gas pedal down here, just put it to the floor and then crank. It's not gonna start up, it's just gonna crank and crank. That is for clear flood mode. Subaru has that to clear flooding situation if your car is flooded with fuel. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna start it up. Where are my keys? All right, so I'm gonna put my foot to the floor and then start. go. Give it a few seconds. I'm gonna cycle this 3 times. All right, now I'm gonna shut everything off. Again, give it a few seconds. And while I'm doing that, I'm gonna head outside and I'm gonna check for any leaks. So now everything is primed. Everything should have some pressure. There's the turbo. Basically just check for any wet, moist, bad things that shouldn't be dripping. Check under the car, make sure we don't have any puddles. I know I do have a little bit of water more up front because I spilled something. Probably can't see it, but looks pretty good for now. Okay, so I have checked everything. The main parts that I'm looking for is the 2 connections for the turbo. That's where your coolant lines are, the new ones that we put in, and of course the one up top. That's where we have the oil line. No leaks on there so far. So now I'm gonna start it up, but before I start it up and it starts to get warm, I lost coolant when I did this. So I'm going to take this off and I'm gonna put in my little anti-spill thing, cap funnel guy. I'm gonna put that up here and I'm gonna make sure I am topped off and I burp the system, make sure I get all the air bubbles out and I am topped up on coolant. Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you haven't already, make sure you follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram so you can get some behind the scenes stuff that hasn't happened yet and unreleased content that no one else has seen. And if you haven't already, watch that video. And if you watched that video, watch that video. And if you've watched both of those videos already, make sure you subscribe down here. Yeah, watch this stuff. It's awesome. And if you've watched that, and subscribed,